Okay, well, welcome everyone to Q2 Governor's Workforce Council meeting. It's been a very busy 2026 thus far, as we can all attest, and as a result, we do have a pretty robust agenda that I'll give you an overview of before turning it over to Kelly. Um, First, we'll begin with everyone's favorite roll call and votes. So I know everyone's looking forward to that, and we'll get to that in a minute. From there, Kelly's going to give an overview of the legislative session that just wrapped, and within that, a grant opportunity that we have on AI. We're then going to move on to updates from our Workforce Pell working groups. As you know, this new federal policy will, for the first time, enable Pell dollars to be spent on short-term training programs. So this is going to have, as we can all appreciate, a significant impact on Connecticut's workforce development system and on expanding individuals' access to training that will help them attain in-demand jobs. And so there's a lot of work that's going into that. The GWC has a leading role in shaping Connecticut's workforce Pell policies and making those recommendations to the governor. We have invited GWC members to participate in the working groups and are all grateful to those of you that have been participating. Now, the majority of our time together today is going to be hearing from a special guest that we have. Secretary Cardona will be joining us. We're going to be reviewing the work that he's been leading on the Connecticut Career Pathways Commission, which the governor established a short time ago by executive order to modernize career pathways and better align that education and workforce systems. So we're going to have breakout groups aligned to the commission's working groups and looking to get your input as we work through that. And so we're very excited that he'll be joining us and the work that'll come out of that. So now, Kelly, if it's okay, I'll turn it over to you and you can do all the serious stuff.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. And thanks everyone for being here today. It looks like we have some really great participation today. At the top of the meeting, we do have roll call and the need to approve our last meeting minutes. So Laura is going to do roll call. And as she calls your name, if you could either vote yes, no, or abstain on the meeting minutes, we can kill two birds with one stone. Just to help the roll call go a little quicker, you'll notice that she's going to go in order that is appearing on the screen. So just be ready to come off of mute as your name is coming near. So thank you, and I'll turn it to Laura.
Great. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Kelly. I need a motion to vote on the Q1 minutes from a member that's listed on this.
So moved. This is Amy Porter.
Thank you, Amy. May I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, from who? I couldn't
Ryan.
catch you. Oh, thank you so much. All right. Please, yay, nay, or abstain as I go through the list. Alice.
Yay.
Amanda Billiot. Amy Porter.
Yay.
Anthony Medici.
Yay.
Brian Doubles. Charlene Russell Tucker.
Hey, it's Amanda Billiot. Sorry, I couldn't get off mute.
Thank you. Charlene Russell Tucker. Christy Pentima. Cindy Bigelow. Dan O'Keefe. Dante Bartolomeo.
So this is Mark. Dante is traveling. She's by phone. So
Thank you,
we
Mark.
vote yay.
Thank you. Ed Hawthorne.
Yay.
The governor's not here. Greg Ugaldi. Heron Gaston. Jeff Flax. John Murphy. Joseph Gianni.
Present and yay.
Kathy Szilard. Kelly Valeries.
Present. Yay.
Leticia Colon. Maggie Hulse,
Yay.
Mark Argash,
Yay.
Matthew O'Donnell, Maury McInnes, Melissa Turner. Miss somebody?
I'm abstaining. I wasn't present. Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Thank you. Michelle James,
Yay.
Molly Kellogg,
Yay.
Monette Ferguson,
Yay.
Nitin Kumar,
Yay.
Paul Costello,
Yay.
Paul Pernaruski, Rodenka Merrick,
Abstaining, I was not in the last meeting.
Rohan Freeman, Ryan Drazowitz.
Present.
Do you yay the
Yay.
minutes? Thank you. Sal Menzo,
Yay.
Sean Coyne. Shh. I thought I saw him. No. Shehu Muhammad, Shelley Davis,
Yay.
Steve Sullivan, Tiana Ocasio,
Yay.
Tony Walker. Let me just do a quick. Motion passes.
Laura, we have a designee from CSU.
No.
No, okay.
And Laura, this is Rich Jacob. I'm
Oh.
sitting in for President
Thank you.
McInnes.
Perfect. Thank you. Did I miss anybody else? And Rich, how do you vote? Yay, nay, or
Yes,
abstain?
yes.
Perfect.
And
Did I
Laura,
miss?
this is AJ Harris. I think I'm going to be the new representative from Electric Vote.
Thank you. AJ, would you like to abstain your vote or
Correct.
vote yay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else that I missed that couldn't get off mute fast enough? Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Now that we've got that through, a few updates for all of you. If you could change the slide. Just with regards to federal WIOA, our WIOA state plan modification was approved. That's good news. It's a very heavy lift to get that through all of the approval processes on the state and federal level. And the next step in that process is our 5 regional local workforce boards are in process of updating their modifications. That process also involves them posting for public comment, which I believe if they're not posted on their individual sites yet, they will be shortly. And then finally, we did receive the federal WIOA allocations from the state. These are going through the process currently, and the Governor's Workforce Council will need to vote on the allocations and the allotments during an upcoming executive committee meeting. So just want to put that on everyone's radar. Next, I'd like to do a quick overview of the legislative session. This was a short session meant to not be a big budget year, but a cleanup session and things that are low budget. So we did very importantly get the act concerning the modifications to the Governor's Workforce Council passed this session. It didn't make it through the process last session. We just ran out of time. And this was really important because we were out of federal compliance. We did not have a business majority as the council sat due to additional members being appointed through the legislative process to the council that were not necessarily a business. So we worked with the federal branch and with our General Assembly and came up with a total of 62 that will get us back into compliance and be business led once more. And we did include specifically a member from the unionized buildings trade. They were originally on the council, and there was some changes within the trade structure, the union trade structure, which then removed someone potentially that was sitting under that umbrella. So that ensures that we have everyone represented as well. You'll see that we do have quite a few appointments to be made to the council. Several of them are at the governor's office being worked through the process. And then we're evaluating where the holes are in the open slots, and we'll be looking for additional candidates. The other is a large omnibus bill that passed HB 5003. This was a labor bill. And there was 4 things that came out of that bill that's related to workforce. First, appointing each of the 5 regional workforce boards a workforce navigator. These are people that will help support students connected to work-based learning experiences, and teachers being supported through teacher externships, as in the pilot program that is being also established through this legislation. It also asks OWS to develop a plan for police officer and firefighter retention. And we'll be doing that in support with some of our other state agencies. And then finally, there was an update to the 5 regional workforce board youth employment formulas. So this really changed the formula so it would allocate funding by where the most youth are by region, and be able to separate that state pot of money out to the regions in an appropriate proportion to the number of youth that they have in their regions. Okay, next slide. Some important upcoming dates. So our next Governor's Workforce Council meeting is in September on the 27th. This will be an in-person meeting, and it's going to be a really important meeting in that we're going to be finalizing our recommendations to the governor's office regarding workforce Pell. And so for all of our council members, this would be an important meeting for you to attend. Please mark it on your calendars. And the location will most likely be in the Hartford region. And once we determine that, we will let you know as soon as possible. And next slide, please. So we're going to give you just a quick overview of Workforce Pell. It's a little complicated. There's a lot of moving pieces. I know that I had to go through it multiple times to really be able to fully understand what this expansion of Pell is going to enable our state to do. We did spend some time on this in the last GWC meeting. We had a working group meeting with members of the council. So thank you to those of you who attended that meeting, and for those of you who are participating in the working groups under Workforce Pell. If anyone else is interested in participating in these working groups, please let us know. So I'm going to do a quick overview of Workforce Pell for those of you who may not have heard of it, and others who might be a little sketchy around what the pillars are here. So if we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the HR 1 federal bill established the Workforce Pell Grant Program. This program has people who are eligible for Pell to utilize a portion of their funds to go towards short-term, career-focused, post-secondary programs that are not for credit. So very different than traditional Pell was for credit programs. These are non-credit programs. It takes effect of July 1 of this year. But many states, including Connecticut, is not ready to meet the requirements of Workforce Pell and have the approval process yet. Very, very few states are, so we're not really behind. Official rulemaking did not end until about a month ago, so it was difficult to finalize all of our policies without really understanding where the final rules landed. This Workforce Pell does utilize some of students' lifelong access to Workforce Pell, and that is a maximum of 6 years and just over $7,000 per year maximum. So there are some differences between traditional workforce Pell and traditional Pell and workforce Pell. On the institutional side, accredited institutions are able to utilize traditional Pell grants, and that is the same with workforce Pell. So it's not that non-accredited higher education institutions cannot access workforce Pell. These dollars still stay with those accredited institutions, and we'll share why in just a few minutes. Programmatically, though, they allow these programs to be shorter than traditional Pell. They are required between 150 and 599 clock hours with a week of 8 to 15 weeks in length. Traditional Pell, as you can see, is 600 or over and a minimum of 15 weeks long. And then regarding the students who can access them, all students access Pell in the same way, and that is through the federal FAFSA requirement application. So they go online, look up FAFSA, apply, and then that way they can determine how much they're eligible for and how they can utilize that for short-term Pell. So that's an overview of Pell on the highest level. Next slide, please, gets into a little bit more of the new accountability standards. And this is where the GWC and the members of our committee need to create the policies and processes to determine the eligibility standards for what programs will be eligible to receive short-term Pell funding. So what I shared with you previously is the requirements federally. And now these allocations and determinations are what each state is going to determine what works best for their organizations. So we need to determine a definition and the alignment of what is high wage, high skill, and in demand occupations. They need to be stackable, portable, and recognized credentialing outcomes for students. So this means they're non-credit, but they would stack into a credited program so that we can start with maybe an entry-level position in a non-credit program and then be able to move into a higher skilled occupation in a career trajectory through credit bearing courses. We need to have a minimum of 1 year of outcome data for any program that may meet these other pieces of criteria that we will establish, because the programs have to have a minimum of a 70% completion rate and a 70% employment rate. And employment rate in the occupation or industry, closely related industry sector job that relates to the short-term training program that they took. And that needs to be validated through wage data. There is also a requirement that there's value added earnings for participants. So it means that by completing this job training program, your earnings will be higher than a high school graduate without a certification. And again, I mentioned the program needs to have a history of 1 year. Next slide, please. Okay, so the responsibilities and the timeline. As I mentioned previously, the governor is responsible for making the key policy decisions and submitting those decisions to the feds for their approval. The governor's workforce council is charged with making recommendations to the governor as to what those policies and procedures will be. And so that's the work that we're doing currently. State staff across many state agencies are working with our education partners to really build out these policies and processes in our working group. And it's really important that we get everyone's perspectives, because the goal here is to get people workforce eligible quickly to get them started on their career ladders or career scaffolds so that they can start earning, and the next step would be earning and learning as they move forward. So I have been working with our partners, and we've established a timeline that we're going over this now, providing you updates, and then in the next Governor's Workforce Council meeting in September, we will be finalizing our recommendations. We'll be sending them to the governor's office for his determination review, and then getting the approval process. We would like to be able to start launching programs either in January or shortly thereafter. So next slide, please. So I've had the privilege of co-chairing the Employment and Credentialing Working Group with Dr. Karen Heineck, the Acting Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs, Student Affairs, and Workforce Innovation at CT State. And we're charged in our working group for determining the priority sectors and specific occupations within them, for determining what the hiring requirement policy will be, and determining what stackability and portability policy will be. So we have drafted a list of occupations and sectors. We've drafted some hiring requirement policies, and these are under review from the Committee on Feedback. We are also in the process of developing the credential stackability and portability policy. I think this is very much aligned with higher ed and how they are working on ensuring that these credentials are stackable and portable. Portable meaning they need to be recognized by at least one institution of higher education. We're also reviewing the scoring criteria and how we're going to build a rubric to determine when we get an application whether those credentials meet these requirements. And then we also are looking for employer feedback, and we'll be having sessions specifically with employers in the very near future that we'll be sending out with all of you. Not just for employers, but I mean, all of you are welcome to provide your feedback. All of these slides will be available, and we'll be sending them out for you. Dr. Heineck, if you're on, and there's anything that you'd like to add that I missed with regards to our employment credentialing work group? Okay, well then I have the pleasure then to pass this along to some of my colleagues that we've been working very closely with to share what the outcomes of their working group. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Kelly, you have a hand up with Radenka.
Dr. Merrick?
Yes, it's me. Thank you. Thank you. So I have a question, like employer feedback session will be coming. So is any incentives for the companies that recruit students who go to come through this cohort, like, 5,000 or whatever we do, like incentives for them to recruit people who go through this program or not?
That's a very good suggestion that we have not gotten to at this point. The governor does have a tax credit for employers who contribute to paying down their employees' student debt, but we do not currently have a tax credit or an incentive for hiring folks with short-term credentials.
Because I think that will be instrumental, because we are all aware that, all companies are on pause when it comes to hiring. I heard from travelers the other day that for the just for the internships, they have over 4,500 students applying or graduates for 250 internships. So it tells you that we have the skilled people in the state that are not getting opportunities. So I think through the employer feedback, it is very important to learn what will motivate them to move in order to recruit these people.
That's an excellent point, and we do hear back from students looking for employment either out of high school or out of college who are also having a hard time finding employment because employers are looking for not only the certificate or certification, but a certain number of years of experience. So an incentive for them to hire maybe at a skills-based level, whether that's a short-term credential or a degree or a credentialed certification without the level of work experience could be very helpful to our students.
And one more thing, many employers are now using AI as a first step in recruitment, and many times they will put the schools that they consider on the top, like who are the schools on the top of quantum and AI, and none of those schools are from Connecticut. So how the employers of Connecticut recruit the students or students with certificate from Connecticut? So that's another question that I would like to get in that feedback from employers.
Perfect. We will ask that question. I do, the Senate Bill 5 that passed, the sweeping AI bill that went through this year, I think it was 2 years in the making or more, does have some protections for people who are applying to jobs online from an AI agent to not push their application out based on some level of a bias. So that'll be interesting to understand how we can implement that and police that. But I do appreciate your suggestions, and we will make sure that we include those, and would be happy to connect with you or anyone else on the planning process and other things that we would like to get out of those feedback sessions. Great. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Diamond. Dr. Diamond is a manager of research and planning at CSCU.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs at the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Credit Articulation Work Group. Just so what you have an understanding of what this is to be eligible for Workforce Pell, federal statute requires that a program must lead to a credit toward a higher certificate or degree program at one or more eligible institutions. A program leads to a certificate or degree program if it provides evidence of either course transferability, awarding of academic credit for prior learning into an existing academic program, and aligns to a related field of study as determined by what we call SIP codes. So just as an update, where this working group is we've met twice, and what we're trying to determine is to draft language that discusses both internal and external scaffolding from non-credit to credit. And again, this is going through speaking with my counterparts at CCIC, also at UConn, and within the CSCU system. We do have articulation agreements, so we're in the process of reviewing each other's language and determining what these policy suggestions can look like moving forward. Also, we're including future conversations and recommendations. We're really talking about including mechanisms for credit for prior learning, whether that's a repository, whether that is a platform, who owns that, what it looks like. So there's a lot of conversation, lots of different organizations, and a lot of opinions on this. And that's all I have as the update for the Credit Articulation Work Group.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Diamond. And I apologize on missing informing your title. I was looking at the wrong document at the time, so my apologies. Thank you for the report out. Is there any questions? Okay. All right. Next, I'd like to turn it to Ashley Dom. She's the manager of research and planning at the Office of Workforce Strategy, to go over the applications and appeals working group.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. I am co-leading this group with colleague Sean from the Office of Higher Education, who couldn't be here today. But please reach out to me or him if you have any questions about what I'm about to say. So, as Kelly alluded in some of the things that she said, a lot of the work is still under development, and the application project is really contingent on the decisions that are made in other working groups to push the policies and recommendations forward that we are working through. So we've figured some things out, but a lot of things are still in this sort of flux period as we're waiting for decisions to be made. Something that I can say pretty confidently that we feel is that there will need to be some sort of centralized location where applications are submitted. We are juggling maybe up to 20 different pieces of evidence that are needed when an institution is applying for eligibility. And that's a lot of pieces to keep track of and manage. And a PDF or email or mail-in, we don't think will be a good mechanism for handling all the different materials that are needed. We are doing some research on options that are already being used within the state. Some of them would reduce redundancies that the state already has information on, such as Title IV eligibility of an institution. So those are considerations that we are making as we are trying to figure out a potential platform that is suitable for this need. Obviously, that comes with some necessary resources, and that is a consideration as well. The program application review and appeal process. So this is one piece that's really contingent on the information that is decided in other working groups. Kelly hinted at stackability and portability. They're coming up with a rubric as to how to judge that. So that will be part of the review process. So again, this work is really contingent on other working groups. We do feel that a lot of the review process will be just making sure that something meets the standard. So again, if an institution is Title IV eligible, if they meet that 70/70 threshold. So some of these things are more, I guess, less subjective and more objective, but there will be some subjectivity in there and figuring out how that will take place. And this is part of our discussion. And then program renewal and removal processes, those are also in development. I think there is a sentiment that for the most part, the SOC codes will remain the same. There will be a demand for certain industries and occupations always, and that some occupations may come and go, but for the most part, that a lot of them will persist. So we are trying to work through what that might look like as things come and go. But we do feel that that will be more of the exception than the regular for eligibility for this program. Any questions? Great.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for all of your work. As you can see, there's a lot of moving pieces with Workforce Pell, and we appreciate all your feedback and input into these. We are posting information up on our website as well as the public meeting, so you're welcome to join us should you decide you want to get a little bit more involved. So at this point, I'm really excited to be able to introduce, wait a second, did I miss one? Data and Evaluation Group?
Yeah, I think do we have Mr. Gall here?
Oh, I'm very sorry, Scott. Thank you so much. I did not see you on my run a show. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Everyone always leaves data to the end. I'll talk about the data and evaluation group. Ashley, who just spoke, is co-chair for this. And I think like you're hearing for Workforce Pell programs, there's a real focus on making sure that those resources are made available to people for programs that are going to benefit them. And so there's the screening from the other work groups on making sure that they're in sectors that are in demand, high skill sectors. That the application process, there's some vetting for the program. They need a track record. And then our group is focusing on really how we're understanding the outcomes and ultimately the impact for those programs over the long term, and there's very high thresholds that programs will need to meet for completion and employment, both at 70%. And so that's really different for this policy. There's a focus on making sure that these programs are going to benefit residents. So we're trying to figure out how we're doing that and measuring the outcomes for residents. And I'll talk through the current status here, which is a sort of a mix of there's, I think, some good news for Connecticut and some areas where we've got some work to do here. So good news is the first finding here. That's sort of the core essential elements that are required for workforce Pell. We have already in place in Connecticut, largely through the work of many of the agencies that are on today's phone call. So to make the reporting and outcomes measurement for workforce Pell work, we need data from the institutions that run the programs. We need data on employment that we would get through wage data the Department of Labor manages. And then while it's not on the slide, we need to understand something about the pathway, the subsequent enrollment in programs and subsequent credential attainment that folks will have. So those are all data sets that we can link through our existing state longitudinal data system, which until a couple of weeks ago was called P20Win, and now we'll have as data link CT. So that's good news. Not just the sort of data is there, but the people, the processes to make sure that that's done legally, safely, ethically, securely, the technical infrastructure to sort of be able to work with and analyze that data. That's there. There's some national groups that have put in place a data model for it, so we don't need to start from scratch. That's good news for us. The reporting for Workforce Well has some areas that we're going to need to sort of pay attention to, and so the work group is exploring what we can do in those areas. So those are the three kind of gaps that I listed out here. Maybe gaps isn't the right word for this. One of those is tracking the occupation for workforce Pell recipients. So if somebody goes into training for a particular occupation, do they find employment in that occupation? That's not currently part of the way we're tracking employment through the wage records. That would be there's some challenges with implementing it. There would be, like it says on the slide, there's time and resources that would be required to put that in place, but that's sort of a critical question for Workforce Pell. And I think, like we'll see later in today's meeting, for career pathways as well, are people on a pathway in the career for which they trained. Non-degree programs, non-credit programs, we've talked about. Data tends to be less standardized and is sort of called upon less often. So we're meeting tomorrow with our work group to, just understand the context for that a little bit more. But that's an area that we're going to focus on. And then last but not least is out-of-state employment and education outcomes. We really only observe the outcomes that happen inside Connecticut. Somebody receives Workforce Pell, attends a program in Connecticut. If they find employment in Connecticut, they go on to subsequent education in Connecticut. We can see those. There are some ways to access out-of-state data on each of those, but it's just going to require some exploration to dig into that in a little more detail. We know it's a small state. We know we're very connected to the labor markets in New York, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and so making sure we can come up with ways to understand outcomes if somebody finds employment across state lines or goes to education across state lines. That's the kind of thing that will be important for understanding these programs are really benefiting residents. So that is our data report out for this group. Back to you, Kelly. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. A lot of work there. Data Link CT is doing some really amazing work on understanding career pathways, and this will just help that work be moved forward. So now I have the distinct honor of welcoming Dr. Miguel Cardona to our meeting. Dr. Cardona is going to be reviewing the Connecticut Career Pathways Commission, providing an overview of the work of the commission and take some questions. And then after, we're going to break out into the 4 working groups that have ongoing work happening for additional information and town hall style feedback. And we're looking forward to all of you sticking around and participating. You'll be able to choose whichever working group that you would like to listen in on. And I think even if you wanted to jump from one to the other, Laura will be in the waiting room helping you if that is the case. And then we will adjourn the meeting at the end of the breakout session. So we will not be coming back to the full group. We'll just adjourn there. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Cardona.
Thank you very much, Kelly. It's good to see everyone. Thank you for having me here. I scrolled through the names and I saw a lot of familiar faces and names. I want to say thank you for the work you're doing. I think the success of our students, our underemployed adults in Connecticut, rests in large part to the collaboration that's happening at this meeting and many of the other meetings that are happening across the state. Kelly asked me to come in and share some of the updates on the Connecticut Career Pathways Commission. So I'm happy to do that. I'm going to try to get through these slides very quickly because I really want to get to the part where you might have questions. So I'll try to get through these in about 15 minutes and then open it up for about another 15 minutes for questions. And again, thank you for your work. So the governor asked if I could chair the Connecticut Career Pathways Commission and support the work that's happening in the state around providing options for students when they graduate and adults as well. Oftentimes we refer to it as students, but it's underemployed adults and adult learners also in our state. Many good things are happening in the state, but I think there was an interest to really make sure that we're all rowing in the same directions and that we're as efficient as possible. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go through the slides that I shared on the first day. To many of you who are in this room right now, we're in that room the day these were shared, so I apologize for the redundancy. I'll be quick with these. We can go to the next slide, please. And I want to mention that, I think we all agree that in order for us to give our students the best opportunities to succeed, we have to level up what we're doing in Connecticut. I'm thankful that the Social Impact Partners is joining these efforts, and you'll meet Chris if you haven't yet. Chris Rivers is on the call. He's joining me on the call, and he'll be facilitating the conversation after. But I think one of the messages, be very frank, is we got to level up in Connecticut. I've been blessed to serve as Secretary of Education. I see what's happening across the country, and I know that in Connecticut we have some of the best talent. We have some of the best systems. I can compare my experience as Commissioner of Education in Connecticut with what I saw in the 49 other states. And I'm really confident that, if we level up, we can be the best in the country. That's the expectation. Next slide, please. I'm not going to be reading slides to you, but we all know that careers today and in the future will require some form of skill development, credential, 2-year degree. And the numbers are just going to continue to grow. Next slide. At the initial meeting, I spoke a lot about what other states are doing. Nobody's just sitting idle, right? I remember having a conversation with the governor of Rhode Island, McKee, who was excited to share with me that he's building 26 hubs in Rhode Island so that students and adults can access skill development and credentialing for the careers in Rhode Island. And I thought to myself, first of all, I didn't know there were 26 corners in Rhode Island, but the reality is, they're eager to move things along. Just last month, I was in Colorado, and Governor Polis is talking about how he's rearranging state government to make sure that this is primary and the person that's leading that work reports to him directly. So there's a lot of efforts happening across the country. But even in the Northeast, there's work happening in Massachusetts that I'm aware of, New Jersey. Obviously Delaware is very, very advanced. They've been doing this since 2014. So the way I think about it, to be very frank with you, not only as an educator who wants to see our students graduate with options, but also, I want to make sure that we keep our contracts here in Connecticut, that we keep our employers here. I remember speaking to folks in Ohio, and Intel shows up in Ohio because their K-12 system and their higher ed system is aligned with their HR systems. So I know what we can do in Connecticut. I remember during the pandemic, we probably led the country in many ways about how we reopened. So I think we can apply that innovation that we have in Connecticut together, and that's the goal of the commission. Next slide. I'll let you read that for yourself. We don't do anything in Connecticut to be number 2 in the country. So I do anticipate that when we finish with this report, and let me tell you, the report's going to be imperfect. It's going to be the first draft, but I anticipate that it's going to help Connecticut really move the needle for the next 5 years and really lead on these efforts and really put together like a synergy of everyone in this room, in this virtual space, everyone that's in the room at the commission meeting, and others who are not in the room or at the commission meeting, but have talents and skills that they can add to the plan that we're going to deliver. Next slide. I often talk about this from an economic lens. I think if we do this right, this is good for everyone, not only for the students that are graduating with options or students that don't have to go to college because college is too expensive to be a career exploration program. What we want to do is make sure students have options when they graduate, and college is a pathway to a career. But I've seen too many students across the country. As a matter of fact, when I got to the DC, we had a student debt crisis, right? We had over 1 million students defaulting on their loans because they maybe started something and realized they didn't like it 2 years in, but they're already $75,000 in debt. It's just not a good model. So what we want to do is make sure students have access to opportunities to think about what they want to do, in-demand careers, and get exposure to that, and make sure that our K-12 and our higher ed systems are working tightly with our labor partners, with our industry partners, with our small businesses, medium-sized businesses. There's an economic benefit to this. I often talk about how Micron brought $15 billion into the economy in Idaho. They set up shop in Idaho. And the vice president of Micron said their education plan was tight. They had a pathway to the employees that I needed. So, it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel or rocket science. It's really about connecting the dots. But if we think about this from an economic lens as well, I think everyone in Connecticut benefits. Next slide. We've been seeing things like this. This article was written in 1976. So for me, I want to be very clear that this is not college or career. We want to kind of go against that notion. And there's a lot of four-year college or bust mentality that we also have to really face head on. But at the end of the day, it's having options. And I've met students across the country that choose college after a year into the workforce because they now know what they love, and now they're going to be passionate about finishing that degree or getting that business degree so that they could work on that, plumbing business or electrical business that they really enjoyed when they started learning those skills. Next slide. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I shared a metaphor of, in Africa, the gazelles form an alert circle to protect the young gazelles in the middle, right? And they protect them from the dangers that are coming around. Next slide. I talked about an opportunity circle that we have for the students and residents of Connecticut, where if we're cohesive and we're interconnected and we're interdependent, there's connective tissue in the middle here where we're all talking to one another and we're not in silos. There's so much more opportunities for the students that we serve, for the Connecticut residents that we serve. Next slide. 3 things that I wanted to share at the initial meetings: that our job is to create systems, not superheroes. If you have programs that are reliant on superheroes, they're not going to last much longer than the superhero. So when the superhero leaves, it goes away. We can all think of either a business owner or a college leader or a superintendent or a school principal that is a superstar. And when that superstar leaves, the programs go away. So, we want to build systems that are interdependent, that last much longer than the commission or the report that we put together. The second one is sometimes the process is the product. And I'm going to say this respectfully. When I came back to Connecticut and I saw we had people working really hard, really, working, doing their very best in their lane, but not necessarily talking to each other. I think we have to create a process where collectively the product is better than what we could do individually. So I'm going to be very intentional as chair of this Pathways Commission to make sure that the process is one that can outlive the commission, that it's expected that superintendents are meeting with college presidents regularly, that's just part of their job now, that boards of education understand that they have to be talking to industry leaders and labor partners about what the demands are, what they're seeking from graduates, while also expecting from our industry partners to say, what can we do to support students as they're thinking about options after graduation. And then the last thing I want to put on the table, artificial intelligence as an opportunity. I don't subscribe to the belief that AI is going to create an apocalypse. No, what it's going to do is shift the type of jobs. We have the most technology ever in the history of our world in 2026, and yet in America the unemployment rate is about 4%. So it's going to shift jobs, but it doesn't mean that people are going to be, we're not going to need humans anymore. The type of work that we're going to need might shift, and we have to be nimble to make sure that our systems and our agencies are adapting to the needs. But I look at AI as an opportunity. Next slide. For me, I referred to Simon Sinek's work, where you start with why. Why are we doing this? We have a shared why that we want to give options to students across the country, across the state, and make sure that our systems are working efficiently to support one another. The what, today it's college and career pathways, right? AI is a what. Mental health is a what in education as well. But I think the innovation that we're going to need from everybody in this room, in this virtual space, and in the commission is innovating our how we do business. How are we working together to make sure that we can solve a problem together? We did that when we reopened. I joke around that 7 years ago, I didn't know what the hell an epidemiologist was. But I became really good friends with Dr. Carter about 5 or 6 years ago when we needed to reopen schools. And I needed to learn from Dr. Carter and take his information to make sure that we reopen schools safely in Connecticut. That was no different when I got to DC and only 46% of the schools were open. I needed to work with Rochelle Walensky at CDC, with Anthony Fauci, to make sure that their information is guiding my guidance, right? So if we think of that model and we remember that, this is where we're going in the future with Pathways. We need to innovate how we work together and not necessarily protect the status quo of how we do business now. That's the work that I want to push. The experts in the room, I'm not coming in as an expert in any one thing other than making sure that we create interdependent systems. Yes, I've had experience at the national level creating playbooks for governors, mayors, and all that. But the talent is in the room, and I want those ideas to draft the plan for Connecticut. Next slide. Really quickly, 4 pillars. You're going to hear this a lot. Every meeting, you're going to hear this at least 2 to 3 times. If we focus on the 4 pillars, this is not like the end all, but if we focus on dual enrollment, if we focus on acknowledging and lifting up and giving more opportunities for industry recognized credentials, if we evolve how we're thinking about work-based learning, and folks, work-based learning doesn't start in 9th grade. The exploration part of it starts in elementary school. We want kids to explore different things that they're not usually exposed to. And by middle school, they want to be curious about careers in those curiosities that they have. And then by high school, they should be looking for work-based learning experiences. And this is where we need some innovation with regard to K-12 and higher ed in our workforce partners. How can we support our business leaders, but how can our business leaders support our schools to give students access to some of these careers that they're going to be looking for in the future? I get excited about that work. And there's a lot of room for growth in Connecticut here. And then the last piece that oftentimes we overlook, our school counselors in K-12, they have ratios of like 450 students to 1 counselor. If we think that we're going to get ahead in Connecticut by adding another thing to these school counselors, we're totally mistaken. Career navigation, career advising needs to be innovative in Connecticut. We need to make sure that we have our partners in the field advising schools and districts on how to think about curriculum, how to think about options for students. I'm excited about that partnership. Anyway, these are the 4 pillars that I think are going to ground some of our work. It's not limited to that, but we're going to spend a lot of time on that. Next slide. We decided that the best way to do this is to create 4 different work streams that are tightly coupled with the 4 pillars, right? So pathways, design, and governance. What does it look like? The last thing I'm going to do, because as commissioner, I realized it didn't work. And when I was secretary, I realized it didn't work. And when I was a district person, I realized it didn't work receiving it. We're not going to prescribe, hey, this is what you need to do in Connecticut. We want it to come from the field. We want it, there's different models that we're going to introduce. There's models all over the country. Michigan has been doing this in the auto industry for decades. Delaware has a model that they just finished 10 years of work on it. So we're going to be providing options of what it might look like. And governance, we cannot have pockets of excellence across our state that are not connected. So how are we going to make sure that this is working seamlessly? The second one, career connected education. What does it look like for students? What does the curriculum look like? How are we giving students hands-on experience like work-based learning, which is the next bucket? That's a big, big piece. I already talked a little bit about that. And then statewide systems. I walked into this meeting when a gentleman was talking about the data systems here. We have so much good things happening in Connecticut, but sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And it's our hope that we can lift up some of the data systems that we have here that can make this work move forward. Ideally, I would love to have a heat map of Connecticut to see on those 4 pillars, where are we doing it well? What needs support? If I'm a superintendent, where can I learn from it? If I'm a university president, which part of the state is doing it really well so I could go learn from that? You see what I'm saying? So those are some of the things. Next slide. My job is to be that connective tissue and to create connective tissue so that when the commission is done, those systems are already interdependent. Next slide. This is the plan of how long we plan on doing it. We're going to be aggressive, knowing that whatever we put forward in front of the governor is going to be the first draft, much like the reopening plan. The reopening plan for Connecticut in 2021, I think it was, the one that's online is the second draft. It's not even the first draft. So the process should be iterative. If the career plan that we have for Connecticut looks the same in 5 years, our commission failed. Because technology is changing so rapidly that it has to be a process that keeps evolving. Next slide. And then today's time with you is really this, engaging broadly and trying to listen and share what it is. We're developing a website. We got social going. I've been doing sessions across the state, and we're being very intentional about listening. The last thing you need is somebody to come in with a prescription of what to do. We need to be listening to what's working and what people are feeling the pain points are so that we could address those in real time. You could take down the slides. So anyway, that's kind of in a nutshell what we're trying to accomplish. And I appreciate everyone on this call who either is on the commission or is really eager to roll up their sleeves and support the work. So thank you for that. Kelly, I'm going to turn it to you to facilitate questions for however long I have. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. There was a lot of information that Dr. Cardona shared with everyone, and would really like to take this opportunity to get your feedback and input, thoughts, places that we need, things that we need to consider. It's really an open forum here. So I will pause and look for hands up.
And while you're looking for hands, Kelly, I want to communicate with the group that after this, Chris Rivers and the team from Social Impact Partners, which is the consulting group that's supporting the commission, they're going to break out into sessions too. And that's going to be another opportunity for folks to share. But happy to hear your thoughts or questions. I see the question from Chris in the chat box. Is the commission accepting new members? And if so, the commission was put together by the governor and the governor's team. So we have 35 members, roughly 35, or it might even be a little bit more. While that's a decision of the office of the governor, what I will say is that we want engagement, and we're finding ways to be engaged. The meetings are open, and we know that it's not just those 35 people that are going to develop the plan. So this is part of the reason why we're trying to get out there. So to Chris, I would say if you can contact Chris Rivers, who's on the call, he'll share his information later. Happy to take your information and hear from you ways you can contribute. Thank you.
If you have your hand raised and I'm not calling on you, please come up off of mute. I can't see all of you at this
I'll help a little bit. Mimi Haley, I see you. I'll go ahead and add you to the spotlight.
Guys, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation. Secretary Cardona, I had the pleasure of working with you previously around homelessness when you were the commissioner, and really appreciated your work then and certainly now. I am the executive director for the National Youth Employment Coalition, and we are also doing quite a bit of work here in Connecticut, and chair the subcommittee for opportunity youth for young people on the governor's task force. My question is I saw the people that are being engaged and that, students is in that, which is great. But I'm also have to ask the question about what about those young people that are not students, that are out of work, out of school? How, just I guess an appeal to think about creative ways to reach them. There are untapped talent. They're typically harder to reach, but I think there's such a strong case to be made for improving systems and pathways from, justice involved youth experiencing homelessness, foster care youth, and so on. So
Absolutely. I appreciate that comment because I think if we do this well, it's going to serve the diverse learners we have in our schools. I think justice involves students, as you mentioned, foster students. If done well, this could also improve pedagogy and get students engaged naturally. I remember I visited New Haven 3 weeks ago, and I talked to a student, and the line that I remember the most, and I was meeting with people all day, he goes, "I never miss a day." A day was the day that he got to work with his hands and be engaged. And this was a student that said, school wasn't like my favorite, but A day, when I get to go into these labs and do manufacturing and get a skill that I can get me a credential, I never miss that day. So that reminded me that we need to make sure that all students are getting access to this. And then to your point about getting the perspective, part of our role right now is really listening and getting out there and meeting with folks as you recommended. So thank you for that, for sharing that.
Thank you, Mimi. Anyone else?
Well, that's good, I think. I think, I don't know. What I want to say is I just want to double down on there are many great things happening. I'm looking around the room right now and I could see there's experts in so many different facets of this. And to those folks, whether you're on the commission or not, we welcome your thoughts, your recommendations, your examples, your headaches, because we know that this has to be Connecticut's. I can't take New Mexico's model or Delaware's model and say, here, use this. That's not how it works. It has to come from within. So your input is valuable, and we appreciate the work that you're doing in this space. We know there are some great examples in Connecticut that I could lift up across the country as an exemplar. We know we have them here in our state. What we want to do is systematize it, right? We want to make it the rule, not the exception. So with that, thank you for having me. And I look forward to continue to work with all of you to improve outcomes for the students and underemployed adults in Connecticut. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cardona. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Rivers. Chris, we did get a quick overview of the different work streams, and thank you for bringing up this slide. And Chris will help inform everyone on where you may go to engage in further conversation based on the work streams.
Yep. So thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you so much, Dr. Cardona. We're going to do breakout groups by work stream. So there'll be a breakout group specifically focused on the pathway design and governance, which will really be there to listen about what folks on the call thinks we need to do for how we make decisions in the state of Connecticut about career pathways moving forward. The second breakout group is all about career connected education. So that's all things about student access, early college programs, student support, career advising. That is largely the career connected education group. The work-based learning group excuse me, is really focused on connection with employers and opportunities for students to engage directly with employers and having industry alignment and how do we make that happen better, more systematically throughout the state of Connecticut. And then the fourth one is all about statewide systems. So what state level policies, statutes, funding models, data systems, accountability metrics to make this be a reinforcing mechanism to make sure that the change sticks and it's not just a report with some good ideas. It comes with real recommendations for the structures we need to make it work in state government. So those are the four breakout groups, and I think Laura is working on setting them up right now. And largely the intent here is to have social impact partners staff basically tee up what the scope is a little bit further, and then largely be a listening session to hear from this group what you think we really should be focused on.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead